What's going on, everybody? Let's Talk Jets Radio. Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody enjoyed their weekends. Quick video here. You got mandatory minicamp beginning tomorrow and a lot of storylines to follow. Jets wrapped up OTAs on Friday. A bunch of players that weren't there for different reasons. It's optional. It is what it is. But certainly the conversation about Haason Reddick possibly not showing up on Tuesday becomes very interesting. And the entire situation is beyond frustrating. Most of this video is going to be positive, but just getting into this Reddick situation real quick. And even though it is very early and this isn't to have any kind of revisionist history, every single Jet fan wanted Bryce Huff extended 2 years ago. It ultimately didn't happen. Last year, it was what it was. He wanted to test free agency. I don't think they could have got a deal done during the season last year, but certainly 2 years ago, they should have did it. They didn't. Now, I don't know how this situation with Reddick ultimately gets resolved without him eventually just saying, I'm not leaving $14 million on the table. I have to show up. There's also the question of long-term security now for a player who is on the last year of his contract, non-guaranteed. He's about to turn 30. Does a 2 to 3 day injury now become 3 to 4 weeks? You hope it's not a situation like that because I don't know how the Jets could ultimately pay him. You start looking at how the team's already very limited financially right now as far as what they could do this year. And you also have two guys that have done it in a Jets uniform already in Conklin and DJ Reed. If they had big seasons, they could be up for extensions as well. So a lot of draft picks that you have to prepare to pay as well. I just don't know how the Jets can afford to extend Reddick at the money he's probably going to be looking for. And if they were looking to keep a player on the defensive line, you would assume they would have made a greater effort to ultimately keep Huff. Now you end up giving up draft resources and you have somebody on the last year of his contract that's not happy. And I even go back to that report a few months ago that fans kind of laughed at, about Reddick chasing sacks, how, it would be a shame if Rodgers was chasing touchdowns. We kind of joked about it, but obviously it meant that maybe at times he doesn't maintain his gap responsibility or he over pursues the quarterback and hurts the defense and things like that. I haven't watched enough film to answer, but I do think it's interesting that you have a team like the Eagles that are looking to win a championship this year. And at least on paper, with a guy like Reddick who's more productive, they said no thanks, and they went with the guy who has more potential in a guy like Bryce Huff. So I hope this doesn't become a distraction and that he's here tomorrow or at least very soon. And ultimately that he's in good spirits and that he wants to be a Jet and that he's motivated to just go dominate this year. Otherwise, pretty good vibes around the team. I'll continue to give Joe Douglas a lot of credit just for the state of the roster right now. But I don't believe that anybody's crowning the Jets anything. I saw that stupid article from Costello yesterday. I think this idea that the Jets ever in my lifetime are going to get crowned anything prior to the start of a season is probably ridiculous. Let alone when they're in the midst of a 13-year playoff drought. We all know they have to prove it. We all know they have to stay healthy. And the spotlight is obviously on the coaching staff, Saleh, Hackett, even Keith Carter. Seeing all these reports about how he's working on his tone, trying to be more relatable to players. And I'm like, good. You got a Hall of Famer in the room now. You can't have this my way or the highway approach. Learn to listen to guys. You got established veterans in the room now. Like you could have the best coaching philosophies, but if your tone doesn't resonate with the players, it's not going to get through. So hopefully he is able to look internally and change some things. Hackett, I've kind of given up on Hackett. I just hope that Rodgers could ultimately cover up enough of what he doesn't do well. I hope he does learn a little bit from how they were able to feed Breece Hall down the stretch last year, getting him involved in the passing game. Hopefully he can find ways to get Corley touches as well. But the rest I do think is kind of just going to come down to Aaron Rodgers bringing it all together, his reads at the line, his audibles, his cadences, and how that benefits the offense. Just so much of what the offense does was lost when he went down last year. So just for now, I'm loving that he's in good spirits. He's rolling outside the pocket, no-look throws across his body, just doing all these little things to get his confidence back, his swag back, while also gaining some strength in that leg. Just little by little, get back to where you were last year. The guy's so talented, so respected. A healthy 17 games of him throwing to Garrett Wilson, and this offense is going to have a lot of success. So hoping for the best there. Otherwise, on offense, not really a whole lot to watch as far as competition between starters, but definitely on the back end, running back, receiver, tight end, some interesting battles there. It seems like Braylon Allen's probably locking himself into that number 2 spot. He already looks like a beast, making catches out of the backfield. We know he can hold up well in pass protection. Tariq Cohen, if he's healthy, his speed, his pass catching ability, that's lethal. You figure he'd be a nice number 3. You wonder where that leaves Izzy, possibly battling for the number 4 spot with Isaiah Davis, so big camps ahead for both of them. Wide receiver, it seems like all the attention still kind of on Allen Lazard right now, and rightfully so. Getting paid a ton of money, need him to produce. I said last week, I hope this doesn't linger if he ultimately isn't producing and the drops and the miscommunications continue. You have somebody out there like Corey Davis still available and some other low-key vets. But you also have Brownlee, you have Gibson, you have Malik Taylor, guys that were making plays all of training camp last year, now that have a year in the offense. So I hope they just don't let this thing linger with Allen Lazard too long. Give those opportunities to somebody else if he's not earning it. Top 3 are set with Williams, Corley, and Garrett. But I would like some insurance behind Williams if he's not 100% from that injury. That's why a guy like Corey Davis I just think makes so much sense. Going to tight end, Zach Kuntz, Kenny Yeboah battling again. Last year was kind of for that number 4 spot. Now it's that number 3 spot. Excited to see Ruckert elevated to the number 2 role. We've all been calling for him to get more reps and more opportunities the last 2 years. Clearly the best blocking tight end that the Jets have. He's also shown some ability as a pass catcher as well. So excited for him, and definitely excited for Conklin to be the featured guy with Rodgers throwing him the football. Could definitely see 80-plus catches out of him. And then going to the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit worried that the overall unit could take a little bit of a step back this year. In theory, with Reddick, you got a more productive player. I just hope, again, that he's happy, that he's motivated, he plays within the defense and all that. But even still, you have 4 guys between him, JFM, and then obviously Al Woods and Jefferson, solid depth when healthy. But it's a lot of production that you're trying to replace. You got to have some trust that Will McDonald can take that leap in year 2. What do you get out of a guy like Javon Kinlaw, who's kind of been up and down with the Niners? Michael Clemens, he definitely needs to show a lot more. Is Lecky Fotu the answer to the woes against the run? It's tough when you had a unit that was a strength for so long that now has so many moving parts. JFM was so versatile, and I hate to make this comparison. I know Reddick's only turning 30, so it's a little different, but it did remind me a little bit of when Kotri left the Jets after 2010. Braylon Edwards also left, and the team brings in Plaxico Burress. They bring in Derek Mason, guys that on paper had the production, but chemistry-wise, it still just didn't work. The one saving grace, I think, for the defensive line is you still have Quinnen Williams, you have Jermaine Johnson. They're going to be your anchors. They're going to be beasts regardless, and you can't have stars everywhere, but I did love how last year they just had 2 waves of guys that would be starting on almost every other roster with, Bryce Huff coming in healthy, fresh, 50% of the snaps. Obviously should have had more, but when he was in there, what he was doing. He was pinning his ears back and going full speed. Quentin Jefferson was big, even Jermaine Johnson, so now you're kind of asking those guys to take a step forward, be even better, while also hoping that Will McDonald, Kinlaw, and guys like that can fill the shoes of Huff and JFM. So hoping it works out. But definitely the rest of the defense looks pretty solid. Linebackers mostly the same. Excited to see Zaire Barnes this year, who stood out a lot in training camp last year. Secondary, mostly the same as well, with the exception of Jordan Whitehead, assuming Ashton Davis and Chuck Clark, as well as Tony Adams. That's your primary trio there, assuming Davis and Clark probably take over the role of Whitehead. Wonder if guys like Bernard Converse, Isaiah Oliver possibly get a look. You also have your draft picks with Stiggers, who opened some eyes early in camp, and Jalen Key, your Mr. Irrelevant. Wonder if he gets a real look. But a lot of veteran safety still out there. You wonder if the Jets do have that Dalvin Cook type of move in them, if it is at safety or possibly a wide receiver. Kind of feel like that defense could still use a little bit of juice, a little bit of a spark. So you wonder if maybe it does come at safety after a few weeks of training camp, if you're not seeing a whole lot out of Davis or Clark. But we'll see what happens. Otherwise, excited for mandatory camp to begin tomorrow. Talk to you guys soon. Go Jets.